Welcome to the Epic Success Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Shannon Irvine. All right. Today we're going to be talking about online events. You haven't seen very many of them lately, have you? No, I'm just kidding. If you're catching this live within the season that we're in, we are in the season of Zoom, the season of live webinars, the season of everything virtual. And I wanted to bring on what I call my secret weapon, somebody that I've been a colleague with for a few years now that truly teaches some of the top online entrepreneurs how to sell from stage, how to truly get their products and services seen. And in today's day and age, the virtual stage, the webinar, and the online training stage has exploded because of environmental impact with COVID. And for some, it has become the very best thing that's ever happened. So I wanted to bring him on because he really walks through the steps that you need to take in order to have what it is that you're doing truly land for the person that's watching and listening, and giving you this framework to be able to not just show up and teach and educate, but to show up, to shift, to change, to transform. So let's dive into today's interview with Colin Boyd. Colin, welcome back to the Epic Success Podcast.
Hi, it's great to be here, Shannon.
I couldn't think of a better friend of mine to come on to talk about the opportunity that's going on around us right now. And in this like shifting economy, shifting time, shifting energy, and everybody kind of figuring out, okay, what is this going to be like? I know you and I've had conversations around how what you've been doing for years now is now coming to the forefront of people's minds of how do you show up in a webinar online and really have it be almost this virtual stage, which you're able to create an experience for. So I'm so excited that you're here to talk today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true because obviously like I've been a professional speaker like on live stages for over 12 years. But through that journey, I've been obsessing as well over online stages. Mm-hmm. And so it's been fascinating watching people run multi-day events over virtual summits. I know for us, we ran a multi-day event and it just went amazing. And what's been fascinating is even I've had people say that the feedback they got from their online event was actually better than their offline event. So it's like, it's kind of crazy what's happening at the moment. It's definitely resetting and recalibrating how we build and run our business.
So what are some of the things that you're seeing right now that are working? And what are those things that have worked all along, but maybe people haven't implemented or it hasn't been part of their discipline or structure that now becomes super important?
Yeah, well, I think when it comes to, talking about this topic of using a stage to grow your business, to serve your audience, you can, obviously there's fundamentals. Fundamentals are, who's your audience? So understanding who your audience, I know for me, a stage is kind of, there's three stages for me. And kind of, I think contextually it helps to understand this. The first stage is the live stage, which, isn't happening right now at the moment, at the time of this recording, but I know it will, moving forward, and it's going to be a massive part, of our business continuing to move forward. And to me, that is like the mecca. That's the top level. Then there's the webinar stage and then the video stage. And so, when you come back to it, the fundamentals are, I think, to be on any stage, the ticket you have to be on that stage, or you could even say like the pass that you need is to be relevant. And so you see so many speakers. I know for me, I've been to so many conferences where you'll see a speaker talk and you'll talk to participants after, and it was like they didn't actually think about their audience. They didn't really think about what is the driving forces, the biggest concerns, the biggest challenges that their audience has. And because of that, they brought their expertise and their IP, but it just either went over the heads or it just totally missed the audience. And I don't care how good your ideas are. If you don't know how to make your content relevant, you shouldn't be on any stage. And so for me, that's the first thing that I look at, is going, how do I make sure that my content is really relevant so that literally within the first 5 minutes, your audience should say, this person really gets me and understands me, and I'm ready to go on this journey with them.
I want you to dive deep into this relevance topic, because what I see a lot and hear a lot, and I had to walk through this journey, you had to walk through this journey of how do I get what's in here out into their hearts, in not a weird, slimy, sleazy way, but in a way where you really connect and it really lands. So there's some transformation for the receiver. So how do you do that in terms of really being able to land and connect deeply with people before you even get into the meat of your topic?
Yeah. Well, there's a 6-stage framework that I use, and I'm not going to go through the 6 stages.
Right.
But essentially, at a high level, this framework takes someone from focusing on themselves when they come into their presentation. Like, if you find yourself asking questions like, what will the audience think of me? Will my content be good enough? Yeah. Will I be credible? Will they like me? Like, if you're asking those sort of questions, your energy is going to be internal. It's going to be focused on yourself, and you're going to be thinking about your own content and not about the content that your audience actually needs to hear. And so this model, this framework, moves all the way up from focusing on yourself through your skill sets, through your structures, all the way through the top levels, which is the masterful level, which is your focus is actually on the audience. Yeah. And at the highest level, I say your focus is on your purpose. And when you combine beautiful, elegant communication skills with a focus on your audience and a focus on the purpose of your life, holy moly, like your communication just goes to a whole nother level.
Okay. This is why I love Colin, because he really understands this internal mental shift that needs to happen in order for you to go from the best kept secret, the most unknown expert in the world, to being the expert that people come to and ask to be on stages and those type of things. And it really does start in that managing of the mind and that managing of who am I? How am I showing up? We all have to go through that stage, but then shifting that energy. I love how you're saying, like, putting all that energy on what does my client need? What are they going to take away? How is it going to be for them? And what intention? I'd love for you to talk a little bit about intentions. And don't worry, those of you who are listening, you're like, oh my gosh, I want that framework. Like, we'll talk about the framework at the end, but talk about like how you take that intention, that mental intention, and that takes self-leadership, y'all. That takes leading your mind and truly, it's not like those thoughts don't ever come up, right, Colin? It's not like you don't have the moment of, I hope people like me, right?
I still have them every time I speak.
Me too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's just the discipline and the mental work of managing the thinking and shifting gears, like shifting the gear, right? So I remember my first paid speaking engagement. I'm standing on the stairs of a hotel and I'd never been paid to speak before, right? And I got a call from it was a managing director of Hewlett Packard. Wow. And he calls me up and he said, Colin, I saw the presentation you did the other night, because I'd spoken for free at another event. And he said, I really love the presentation. I'm curious, like, would you be available on this particular date? Because we've got a training day coming up. And now, first of all, I had no clients. So I'm like, let me check my calendar. Hang on, Mike. Let me just check my calendar and see if I'm available. And I check it. Obviously there's nothing on there. And I'm like, I'm available. Right. So he's like, awesome. He's like, put that day aside. Let's have a chat about it. And he's like, we've got this training day coming up. And he goes, I want you to speak on success and career success, et cetera, and just human behavior. And I was like, this sounds great. This was when I was doing life coaching at the time. And then he goes, how much are you to speak? So I've never said a fee before. Now, I just literally made up a fee. It was actually $4,000. I literally just made it up, right? And I said, I'm $4,000. And he didn't blink an eye, like literally did not bat an eye. And I was about to find out why. Because then I asked him, I said, hey, Mike, I'm curious, like, I forgot to ask how many people are going to be at this training day. And he said, there's probably going to be about 5,500 HP employees at the training day. Oh my.
You just say 5,500 people.
Okay.
Right? And I could see why he didn't blink at my fee.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened was, leading into this presentation, as you can imagine, I started asking myself questions like, what are they going to think when they realized this is the first time I've ever spoken for a fee professionally? Then I'm thinking, what are they going to think of me because I look like I'm like 12 years old, right? I'm really young. I'm like going to be the youngest person in the room. Will I be credible? Will they like my content? Will I be good enough? Will I freak out when I'm standing in front of 5,500 people? Like all these questions. So you can imagine I am internally combusting at this stage. And there was about a 4-month lead up into this presentation.
Oh my.
So, I mean, my amazing wife, Sarah, she's basically like, I don't know if you watch Billions at all. So, you know, Wendy?
Oh yeah.
I call her Wendy, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. She's Wendy for sure.
She's
Times
so
10.
Wendy. She's my Wendy, right? And I come there, I'm like, babe, I'm completely freaking out here, right? And she's helping me work through it, but I'm really struggling to work through it. And then she stops. We're on this walk. She stops and she looks at me because she's probably fed up with my complaining. And she goes, Colin, why are you doing this presentation? And I was thinking, well, it's because this is what I want to do. It's my speaking. And she goes, no. Why are you doing this presentation? And then this was the first time I realized, I was like, well, I'm doing it because I want to help people. I'm doing it because I want to change people's lives. I'm doing it because I want to improve their experience at work, and so that when they go home, they're more present with their kids, they have better thinking, they enjoy their own life, they have better experiences in their feelings and their emotions. I'm like, that's why I'm doing this. And then all of a sudden, the whole energy of my preparation shifted. And I remember preparing for that day and coming in. I've still got a photo of me walking into HP with the big HP sign and presenting, and it actually went really well. A guy on the front row jumped up. He ended up being the global learning development manager, and he's like, Colin, we need to talk. And it led to being a client deal for like 10 years. Wow. But this was the revelation I had, was when I realized what my whole presentation was about, and I moved my focus away from myself and realized why I was really doing it, everything changed in my presentation. And so that moment fundamentally changed my life when I had that revelation.
Yeah. All right, guys, I want you to write that down. When Colin shifted from I to Y, everything changed.
Yeah.
When he shifted from I to Y, everything changed. Write that down.
I love that. So, that's a quotable.
Quote that. So I would love for you to, because I know a lot of my listeners are like, I have this message, I have this mission, I know I can help people, but they're scared to death to do it, and they like what you were talking about, putting that why in front and leading with that why. What are some of the next steps after they kind of really define the why? Because I believe a lot of the people who are listening do know, maybe they're not focusing on it as much, but they do know that why. How did you take that why and turn it into kind of gasoline and start taking the actions that created those type of results on the stage?
Yeah, I think because to stand on any stage, whether it's a webinar, whether it's a Facebook Live, whether it's a live stage, it takes you going beyond yourself. And any great speaker or communicator, when they come into their presentation, I know even for me, probably for you, Shannon, like you still have moments where you're concerned, you're freaking out, you're like going in your head. And then I know that you teach just incredible tools with managing your mind and your emotions. I've gone through, a lot of your processes and just love them. And so using those sort of processes like helps so much. And really it is that mental game, because with speaking, I reckon, at least 60%, 70% of the game is actually your state management is so important. And when I do trainings in our program, Self from Stage Academy, we go like super deep into the psychology of speaking specifically, like around how to like get your mental game right for a stage. And so I think to go beyond that is to get really conscious of the questions you're asking. So I know for me, I've just become incredibly aware of when I find myself going down that rabbit hole of, asking really poor quality questions, or I just notice my feelings feeling flat or scared or anxious, but at an extreme level. Because to be quite frank, I think you should feel a little bit nervous coming into a presentation.
Yeah, it's actually brain-based. Like the neurochemicals that produce mass levels of anxiety are the exact same neurochemicals that produce a mass level of excitement and anticipation. They're the same chemicals. So sometimes, we teach is that this neurocoaching model, that thoughts create emotions. So as you're like feeling that emotional experience that feels like a pattern of, oh my gosh, anxiety, you can literally flip the switch knowing it's the same chemicals to excitement if you have it plugged into your why. If you have it plugged into your I, then that thought process is just going to loop and loop and loop and loop until you're talked yourself out of the stage,
That is so true. When you plug it into your why, it becomes excitement. But when it's plugged into your I, it becomes fear.
Yeah.
I love that distinction. And that's exactly right. And I know for me, any big decision that we make in our business and in our life, I always have to ask myself, which is, what's more important, my fear or the potential that's on my life and the impact I want to make in my life? And if you want to become a speaker, or if you want to speak on stage, or even just run webinars or whatever, you really have to focus in on the impact that you want to make in your life. And because I know for us, like the other day we were running a training a little while back actually, and we had like over 1,000 people live. Right. And I remember it was like going nuts, like the chat area. Like if you've ever run a webinar at that level, it's, you ask a question and the entire screen just disappears, like because there's like 9,000 comments in 1 second. But I remember like even the energy on a webinar was fascinating. And I realized and I could find myself, and as you get to high levels in your communication, you start to walk this like finer line and you start pushing boundaries. Because I know you stand in front of 3,000 people, it's a totally different energy from standing in front of 5 people.
Yes.
And so as you go up those levels, then you really have to like become like almost a, high performance athlete in your thinking to be able to show up at that level.
Yeah. So webinars now, Colin, they were saying they were dead.
Let me tell you this. Webinars are never going to be dead.
Ever.
They're never going to be dead. And the reason why people say that webinars are dead is because they're trying to sell another product.
Yes.
Right? It's just marketing, right?
Yeah.
Webinars are never going to be dead because you look at a webinar is just a stage. And stages are never going to be dead. And so you look at, speaking as a stage, a live stage is actually never going to be dead. Like I know we're having a pause at the moment, but it's never going to be dead. It's going to come back. You look at any great movement that happened ever in history, it was led from a stage. Any great, you look at like a Nelson Mandela, you look at any sort of like movement that happened, you see they spoke and they led, they communicated. Any religious movement, they spoke, they led, they communicated. And so it's never going to die. So I think mastering a stage, if you're a business owner, is a fundamental if you want to actually grow your business and actually generate a flood of clients.
I couldn't agree more. When my business was all offline, I had to go through that process, right? And webinars really was the medium in which I was able to get a platform and was able to start speaking the truth that I knew could transform people's lives. And I don't know about you, Colin, but it's been fun. That's maybe not the right adjective, but it's been interesting and exciting to watch during this season. If you're listening to this later, we are still on quasi lockdown from the coronavirus in 2020. And I watched what was happening internally for me and a lot of leaders where we were like, okay, yeah, we can't be in person, but we have to still lead. We still have to take, just like you quoted Mandela and, all of those leaders, we still had to step in and say, let's rise above this. So we did we worked together on a panel and I did 5 different panels with different entrepreneurs, just talking about here's how we're stepping into our personal leadership, our financial leadership, and our business leadership in a season of unshifting, unknowing, uncontrollable circumstances. And it was such a powerful move. And then I, of course, saw that inspired Pete Vargas, and then Pete Vargas did this live big event, and then that inspired, all of us inspired Rachel Hollis, and then she did this. And it's just so fun to watch, as you know, like we rise together like that, and good leaders inspire other leaders to become better at their craft and to step into higher levels. And so many of my listeners have said, like, okay, like I have the calling, I have the mission, I have even the transformations under my belt. Now I want to step into this webinar space, the stage of webinars in a way, but now I know I'm going to attract all of these people and I don't have control over who's in the room. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what it's like to not have control over who's in the room, and how you manage your mind around that, how you handle it, and how you can actually use it to your advantage for your message.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you look at a webinar and the process with running a webinar, the webinar actually starts with the posts that you're putting on social media, the emails you're sending, the ads you're running. The webinar starts there because having the right audience in the room, there's actually 3 factors that you need to be able to sell on stage. You need the right audience in the room. That's the first factor. You need the right message to be delivered, and you need to speak in a way that sells. That's your message, right? So the speech, the webinar, the actual way you communicate needs to speak in a way that sells. And then finally, you need an irresistible offer. And you get those 3 things working together and you have got $1 million business. Mm-hmm. And so, but what happens is, and I've noticed this, is I've had a fantastic speech, an incredible offer, and the wrong audience, and it's fallen flat. Yeah. I've seen clients with the right audience and a really good message, but not an irresistible offer, and it's kind of gone flat. Mm-hmm. And so you actually have to get them working together. And so when it comes to an audience, I'm thinking about how do I message what I'm doing at the front end so that I get the right people in the audience. And one of the things that I'm obsessed about is understanding there's 2 shifts that need to happen in your speaking to be able to grow your business. The first shift is you need to see speaking as selling. Mm-hmm. And so, because the mistake that people make is that they see speaking as education. Because it's understandable. You grew up in school, you watch professors, you watch, like academics speak, and you're like, oh, so it's education, it's teaching, it is right. Maybe even entertainment. You've seen like motivational speakers and things. It's entertainment. But until you make the shift of going, no, speaking is actually selling. Now, when I say selling, it's not selling as in pushy selling. It's selling at its most integrate level is this. It's deeply understanding your audience and speaking in a way that resonates with them so the right person says yes to the action that you're asking them to take. Yeah. And so that is so respectful, that is deeply empathetic, that is complete integrity, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, one of my obsessions is helping people to not just speak to entertain, but speak to sell. And so, there's a big difference in how you do that. That's the first shift, is that speaking is selling. And then the second big shift is realizing that selling at its core is serving.
Amen.
And come on. So, because if you run a business, you can't actually serve people at the highest level until they pay you money. Right. And some of you might have resistance around that, and you go, "Oh, Colin, no." And I know Shannon runs an amazing non-for-profit, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're running a for-profit business, you can't actually serve someone at the highest level until they pay you. And the reason why that is because part of the transformation that they're going to experience, as our friend James Wedmore says, is the transaction itself. And so the transaction is actually part of their transformation. So even if you've got this amazing content, they're going to see less transformation if they don't make a transaction with you. And so at the core of it, good speaking sells what you do. And then selling at the core of it is actually serving.
Okay. I hope like that was a masterclass on a podcast. So I hope you wrote that down. Like, seriously, take a moment and write that down. Like this, I believe in this so wholeheartedly. This is at the core of human nature. It's if you have a message and a mission and a vision and you don't want to actually make transformations, then you shouldn't be selling. Like I always think about it like this. Like I always visualize, and this is the mind work, right? But before I write a piece of email, before I write an ad, before I start to write my webinar script or my video script or anything, I think about that person's suffering. And the fact that their suffering can be completely relieved if they just got the work in their hands. And how selfish it is for us to sit there and be afraid, center focused on ourselves, to put that thing out there when somebody is in suffering. And I know that sounds like a little bit over dramatic, but knowing how our brain works and how our brain makes decisions, it becomes so powerful to make that switch into like selling is serving, because there is a person suffering and you have the solution to that suffering. You have a solution that's going to either make their life better, easier, make more money, make things go faster, whatever your solution is for that pain or the thing that's going to get them a better result. They don't have it yet. And the only difference between them having it and not is you stepping into that role.
I love this concept, because think about this, all the listeners out there, you're listening, even for you, Shannon, like, think about someone in your life who you've done a program of theirs, a mastermind, a program or something, and it's fundamentally changed your life. Like you wouldn't be where you are in business and in life without it, right?
Yeah.
Now, imagine that they decided that they were not going to make that offer to you back in the day. Imagine that they made a different decision. They were like, no, I'm too scared to make this offer. I'm going to focus on myself and be too scared to make the offer because I'm worried about what people are going to think of me.
Yeah.
Now imagine what would be missing in your life if that's what they chose.
Yeah, powerful.
Now this is the thing. You are that person for your audience. And so when you don't make your offers and see selling as serving, you're actually robbing them of the transformation that they can have through you.
All right, we're going to go to church up in here. Like
Come
that
on.
is entrepreneur church right there, right there.
There it is.
Let's go there. So that's powerful. So speaking is selling and selling is serving and really focusing in on that. So I know that my listeners are like, Colin, like, how do I get from A to B? Like I have to get this in their hands. What do I do? What are the things? I know you talked about your 6 stages framework. By the way, for those of you who are listening, this is a framework that I use in all of my trainings and all of my webinars. I've been through Colin's work. So it works. And it is ultimately like the best active service you can do for your tribe is to actually set it up in a way that people receive it. And can hear the message and then can take a decision and create action from it. You have a training coming up that is going to be diving into the steps of the framework. Can you give a little bit of a preview? And then, of course, in the show notes, we're going to give you a link to be able to go. It's a completely free training, right? Or is it a charged training?
I'll make it free for your listeners.
No. So nice. I know. Put them on the spot.
Totally. No.
Yeah, tell us what it's about, because I think
it's a free
powerful
training. Well, I've had so many people ask me, Colin, how do I actually use a webinar as a stage to sell my products and my programs? And so, we're going to put together a training. I know that Shannon's audience is going to be a big part of it, which I'm excited about. And basically, I'm going to take you through that 6-step framework. I'm going to take you through, like on a much more deeper level, the structure of actually looking at a speech or a webinar that sells and converts, because there's usually two types of people out there. There are people who are good at kind of entertaining in their speaking, and there are some people who are good at selling in their speaking, but not very good at entertaining. And so it's actually you need to learn to do both. You need to learn to be engaging, but also speak in a way that leads the right person. It's only the right person to the next steps. And so, we're going to be unpacking that in the webinar. It's going to be called how to sell, not just speak, how to sell your products and your programs on webinar. And so it's a really targeted, focused masterclass. It's not like a broad general one. So I think that if you turn up, you sign up, it's going to be well worth your time.
Now, I'm curious for my listeners, if somebody is just getting started with webinars, is it for them? And then is it for them if they've been doing them for a while? I'm just curious what each audience can kind of take from it.
Yeah. I mean, one of my obsessions, and I trust and I hope you've experienced this with my training, is that I try to take advanced content and make it understandable.
Absolutely.
And so even if you're starting out, I definitely think come and check it out, show up and engage with me and engage with the process, because no matter what, you'll take away something valuable. Yeah. And I really want to encourage those people who, if you've ran a webinar before and you haven't got the results you've wanted, or you've spoken a lot before, I can 100% help you. I get the opportunity to work with literally the biggest names in the world in this space. And I know Shannon's joined our program. So I'm just going to take you through the fundamentals of speaking on webinar and selling on webinar. And I just know that it's going to bless you and help you no matter what.
Are we able to brag about some of the people that you've worked with? Just fun. Am I allowed? Tell me no if I'm not.
Of course you can, of course. Okay,
because Colin is so humble. He wouldn't normally do this. But he works with people like Amy Porterfield, James Wedmore, Carrie Green, like some of the big players in the online space. And as you heard with some of the corporate clients out there. So I wish, it took me a good 3 years to hone my craft. And a lot of that was once I was able to get some of your methodologies once we met a few years ago. And I love the idea of shortcutting this for my audience, like taking what took me 3 years of trial, error until I kind of plugged into your system, and giving them that fast track to not have to do that and actually get to have the entire plan up front. So it's such a generous thing that you're putting out there, this training. So I appreciate you doing that for my tribe.
Oh, no, I'm just so excited. I mean, to be really frank, it's my life's work.
Yeah.
And it's the last 12 years of, doing thousands of stages around the world, combined into a short training, like literally the best. And I've gone through the mud for you. So
appreciate that.
I'm gonna help out.
I love all these Aussie sayings. And if you're in my tribe currently, the Epic Success transformational coaching, the VIP level, and also my neuro coach certification clients and master coaches, we're doing a special training just for you coming up. So make sure you're checking your email for that. If you're listening to this, make sure you check your portal if it's past that time, because that special training Colin's doing for you only is going to be pretty amazing as well. And then you can also attend this live training that you're doing. Colin, I would love for you to let my tribe know, if they could think about one thing as we wrap up, as pertaining to the stages they want to be on, whether it be webinar or whatever the stage may be. What's the one thing that they need to start moving in on, and maybe even show up for the masterclass with, that will help propel them?
I think it's at the core of it. There's an idea called the core premise. So the core premise is essentially going, what is the core thing that I am trying to, and I say the word prove, but it's not like, you're not trying to prove it. You're essentially trying to show the audience that this way of doing something will get you the results you've wanted because of the results you've seen, the results your audience has seen. And so, for example, I'll give you an example of a core premise. A core premise could be that, like, learning to master a stage or a webinar is the fastest way to grow your business and get a flood of clients. So that's a core premise. And so you have to find your own core premise of what you want to bring to the world to help people with. And when you discover that, and then you use this methodology that you'll learn on the training around it, your business can quite literally change overnight. And I say that with absolute conviction and integrity, because I've seen my business, I've seen other people's business. Like, you dial in one webinar can be the difference between running a $10,000 business or $1 million business. Mm-hmm. And so you nail that one presentation and everything can change.
I love it. This core premise idea is huge. I mean, it was the game changer once I got that key. And my tribe knows I talk about it all the time. You know, the key to everything you want, to that six-figure business, to that multiple impact out on the platforms, is to train your brain so that you can transform your life and business.
Exactly.
And so you'll find yours. And I know you even kind of help them with that as well. So don't get tripped up on that. But I'm excited to see you there on the live training. I'm going to be hanging out with you there as well. And Colin, thank you for just talking about how stages really can shift everything and offering this training for people to go deeper. I appreciate you so much, brother.
Oh, I love it, Shannon. You do great work, and it's a privilege to serve your community with you.
All right, y'all. In the show notes, we have all the links. So make sure you get on that training. He doesn't do it all the time, so I don't know when the next time he is going to do it. So make sure you jump on that training. Don't let this opportunity or season go by. What if, I'm not saying like everything that's happened for you like this. I'm not going to go there, right? I'm not going to go there. But what if in this uncertain time, you can now look back a year from now and say, because I stepped in instead of stepping back, I stepped in, I knew my why, I figured out my core premise, and I moved forward on the stage, everything changed. That's what I want for you. And so I'm excited that Colin was able to bring that today. Thanks, Colin.
Thanks, Shannon.
All right, y'all. What an amazing interview with Colin. The links are below for the masterclass. I will see you there on that masterclass. It's going to be pretty amazing. I always learn something new from Colin every time he does one of these live trainings that I implement in my business that even makes the growth go faster and serve you deeper. So I will see you on that masterclass. Links are below. And until next week, I hope you are the creator of your thoughts. Remember, one of the key takeaways in this interview was when you shift from I to your why, everything changes. So I'm going to challenge you this week to shift from worrying about I to worrying about your why, and let that be the filter that you take this week through. All right, that's what I have for you this week. We'll see you next week on the Epic Success Podcast. Bye for now.